Greetings and salutations, friends, to Humankind, the latest turn-based strategy game in the Civ style from Amplitude Studios, famous, of course, for Endless Legend and Endless Space. They are most definitively old hands at the game by now, and it absolutely shows. As Humankind is not just a Civ-like game aping after the previous Civ games. Oh, no. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it is a superior product to the Civ games. Not in one singular overriding aspect, but rather in how all of the little things come together. The new mechanics, the new little touches, like the city system, the culture system, etc. And the new combat system. Oh boy, is that a vast improvement. It all ends up forming into a greater whole, which I am very, very pleased with. And I'm happy to see it as well, since I was a little bit skeptical towards this game. I can't lie, I was a bit worried for multiple reasons, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's begin with the city system, which I really, really like. Instead of having several cities scattered through the map with areas of influence, you build a city. Archtopia is, of course, my capital. And then you build outposts surrounding that city that you can then use to gain access to luxury resources. The city itself is where most of your upgrades will be happening. You will have access to wonders, shared projects, where all of your cities can cooperate to construct them. Wonders as well, by the way, are reserved. So you spend a certain amount of influence to reserve a wonder, then you can build it, and you cannot reserve another wonder before you've created the preceding one. I much prefer this system because it doesn't mean it means you don't have to worry about putting a buttload of building and time into creating a wonder that you might be beaten by another civilization by like one turn. Here you get to actually spend the influence, secure the wonder, and then construct it a little bit at your leisure, bearing in mind, of course, that if you spend too long, you might be beaten to the next wonder. It's a good compromise between a little bit of safety and security, and also a trade-off for being able to reserve them. Then you've got districts. Those are the on-the-map buildings. For example, the Farmer's Quarter, you can place that anywhere on the map, including within the territory of your outposts. So I could put one down over here, and that would give me access to another 16 food, and a worker slot. The worker slots you can see up here. So currently I've got 5 out of 11 farmers producing food, and I've got 12 out of 12 industrial workers, 6 out of 6 economists, 7 out of 14 scientists, and so on. These depend on the surrounding benefits and advantages. For example, we've got a Maker's Quarter here. It has +3 from exploitation, which is the base value of the tile. It's got +1 from the Maker's Quarter, the district itself. And then it has +3 from infrastructure, from a forge, from a charcoal kiln, and from a high furnace. And those are infrastructure upgrades. So if I, for example, bought the Manufactorum, that would give me +1 industry per worker and +2 worker slots. There are also tile-specific upgrades, like irrigation, for example, which adds on a certain amount of food to a river tile. So if you want to be doing farm exploitation, you might want to put those on rivers. If you want to be doing exploitation a bit later on with a water wheel, that will give production, and so on. These also allow you to ramp up your economy. Everything gets progressively more expensive as you continue, as you of course have a buyout option, 36,000, as you can see right there. But with more and more economic buildings giving you more and more money per individual pop in the trade, means that you can actually accelerate your economy very, very, very quickly, and gives you a good reason to specialize using the research tree. Then you expand your borders via outposts, which you can see over here. This is actually several territories. So I can zoom out and you see the tiny little dotted black line. That indicates the smaller territory. So Archtopia has a territory here and a territory here, and you can see the outposts as well. And this then gives you access to the various strategic and luxury resources like saltpeter, like copper, like coal, like coffee, and like incense. These can also be traded via other civilizations and give your civilization various benefits. Incense, for example, gives you plus 10 stability and plus 5 money on all cities. That is a wondrous effect, so that is a bonus, and then it gives plus 5 and plus 10 for stability on all cities. That's a really cool system, and it leads to far more sprawling and natural-looking borders and cityscapes. Instead of having dots of influence all over the place, you have actual borders with neighboring nations, which is really, really cool. It also gives you a lot of strategic objectives for warfare, as you strike onto the map to plunder tiles, which can get you a lot of money, and it also gives you the ability to build fortresses on the map to create strategic choke points. It's a really, really, really cool system. And the districts too, if you build a wall, the districts then become an actual battlefield map when you engage in the turn-based fighting, which is its own turn-based system, which we will be demonstrating in a little while. Let's also talk about one of the other big changes, the culture system. I am Chinese, because Chinese have the best benefits at the late age, in my honest opinion, and I desperately needed the money, so there you go. Everyone starts out in the Neolithic Age. This is another big improvement of a Civ, in my opinion, because you start out with one foraging band. But you then start exploring the map, and there are a ton of little curiosities to be collected, which give you access to research points and food. Once you've picked up a certain amount of food, you get another little band of dudes in your tribe, which you can then split off to explore even more of the map. It gives you something to do immediately. You don't just go looking for a town, settle, and then spend 10 turns building a scout. You're scouting, you're fighting wildlife, and you're engaging with the game from the very first turn, which I really, really, really like. You can even begin waging some small-scale wars against your neighbors if you so choose. And you don't have to split off your dudes either. It might be in fact advantageous to keep several units in the same stack so that you can hunt down mighty woolen mammoths covering the earth. It's really, really cool. Then, once you've got your first star, you can move over to the first proper age, in which case I picked the Hittites. Each faction, each culture, comes with a benefit, in this case militarist, which gives you access to an affinity. In this case it is Iron Reserves, which allows you to call up a military unit directly from the population without purchasing it. I also get a unique building, the Awari, and a unique unit, the Gigir, probably. All the cultures get a unique building and get a unique unit, and depending upon your general geographical area, you do also get units that look a little bit different. For example, the Mughal horsemen over here will look different from my own horsemen, and their swordsmen will look different from my swordsmen, etc. Then, after the Hittites, things got a little bit aggressive, and I moved on to the Greeks, which... Hittites to the Greeks. Right, okay, sure. From a heavily war-based society, which focuses primarily on chariots, to a scientific, peaceful society with hoplites. Meku mucho sensu. Hell, at least it makes somewhat more sense than the Greeks to the goddamn Vikings. I have some problems with this system because I just don't think that the Greek culture could spawn the Viking culture. Bearing in mind that the reason why the Norsemen became Vikings was because our land was goddamn awful. We had to expand, to explore, to trade, and to raid other nations just to bloody survive. The Greeks, they did not have that need, not even remotely close, and so the Greek civilization, in my opinion, would never go over to be the Norseman civilization. Though, on the other hand, I could see the Norsemen going on over into a Spanish-style civilization, a heavy focus on religion and conquistador, exploring infantry. Definitely, that makes a certain amount of sense. Spanish to German, that makes a certain amount of sense as well. A very industrialized future, you know? That makes sense. Germans to Chinese? Well, let's just call that the socialist route, shall we? Because Germany does not get to be in the contemporary age, but the Soviet Union does. Oh, make you muchu sensu indeed. And how do you go from these various eras then? Well, you need to get era goals. It's not enough to simply research the next era, you have to unlock various goals and objectives, which allows for multiple different playstyles. In my case, I got rather aggressive around this time as the AI decided to invade the shit out of me, and so I gathered 3 military star for destroying 41 military unit. I gathered 1 expansionist star, 1 aesthetics star, I guess, 1 builder star, 2 agrarian stars, and 1 scientist star, which gave me enough to proceed on to the next era, where I continued murdering the ever-loving shit out of my neighbors, and also got a little bit scientific as well, which is quite lovely. This gives you the ability to focus heavily on influence, to focus heavily on economy and building, or to focus heavily on just simply population, or a combination of all of them to continue along the eras at a decently rapid rate. This is also tied to the score system, the fame system. These various objectives will give you fame, and you don't need to move on to the next era immediately. In fact, there may very well be bonuses to not do so, because each of these stars give you a certain amount of fame. So if I had decided to not go over to the Spanish immediately, and instead gone for another agrarian star, I would receive a fame bonus. You can also choose to stay with the same civilization for another era, which denies you access to a new civilization's benefits and units, but gives you a 10% increase to your fame, which can potentially be a big upset later on in the game. That is all really, really quite cool. Another newfangled aspect is how you deal with other civilizations. The game has a cause belli system, as do all games, because after all, you do need some kind of a reason to attack your neighbors, though I really love the fact that early on, you don't even need that. Let's say, for example, that we've got the Aztecs over here, right? You've got a series of treaties. Right now, we've got tolerate skirmishers, which means that I'm actually kind of allowed to attack them, even though we are not at war. And early on, when a lot of the map is unclaimed, there are constant skirmishes between various nations. Now, if I were to move in here, as you can see now, this would require a declaration of war, because we're now in a bit more of a modern era. There are rules to be followed. Earlier on, you might simply be acquiring attrition whilst remaining in enemy territory, allowing you to raid across borders, allowing you to attack their military units, allowing you to sack their buildings, etc. Certain militaristic ideas are even able to move into enemy territory and steal settlements even though you're not at war. In the case of the Chinese, my ability is the Merchant Power Investor, which allows me to upgrade a resource. Now, it's not particularly great right now, because of course everything is already upgraded basically, but if I get the uranium research up and going, I can pick that up, for example, nice and easy. Now, let's actually see if we can't get a bit of a war going. You need a certain amount of war support to declare war on a nation, or you can declare a surprise war, but obviously this will piss up absolutely everyone. Not necessarily a particularly great idea. It'll also give you badges, in this case, the Traitor Badge. Whilst having this badge, its owner gains some war support when destroying an enemy district based on the level of the badge. Now, war support is how willing your people are to continue the war, and the main way you win wars is by reducing your enemy's war support to 0, forcing them to surrender. This means that you can't just wipe out an enemy nation in one go, which is good because it makes things a little bit too easy, but you also need an ability way to build war support. Currently, I'm getting +3 from having more ongoing demands. So you can go over to crises here, and you can see that I am demanding that they convert to my religion. They have a grievance, that is that they want me to convert to their religion, but because I'm a lot stronger than them, they're not going to levy that at me. You might also be able to, in the earlier stage of the game, demand tribute, or demand they hand over a territory, and so on. These are your cause belli. In this case, I think we've riled up our populace long enough, so it's time for the Chinese Empire to grow yet again. We're going to start moving in our troops here. Get them landed. I am still using wooden vessels in the contemporary era. Don't ask me why, but that's how we are doing things. And we've also got some guys over here. We're going to keep those nearby. A little bit of protection. And then we're going to end the turn. The turns are nice and quick as well. Some can take a while. I'm presuming maybe because the AI is fighting or thinking over a particular thing, because some turns can be a lot longer than others, but most are pretty damn quick. We might as well get ourselves a little bit of money here as well, so we're going to go and ransack this ambergris manufactory up here. Why not? Why not? As we're also waiting on some reinforcements here. I am making more military units, and of course you can also buy out units. The size of your army grows as you unlock new technologies. In fact, let's see here. I've got one fighter there. I wouldn't mind another fighter. Let's buy out a fighter, shall we? Do buyout, find the fighter. There you go, 19k. And then that'll be available right over there, as you can see. Currently, they are on air patrol, but you can also use them to strike at enemy targets, and they are giving me a lot of vision over nearby areas, which is really, really quite cool. We've got a regiment over here. We're going to move them up here while working on another army. And you also get tons of little special events like this, which is really cool as well. Your war with the Aztecs still rages, but now troubling consideration has risen in the city of Aztecs. Okay, there are whispers of spies and treason, and one group in particular has been singled out, those in the city who have historical or family ties to the enemy. These civilians have done nothing wrong yet, but an undercurrent of fear and violence runs through the streets. What will you do? Curfew, imprison, or conscript? These will then give you various effects. Sacrificing, minus food, and I get a easy ability to produce land and naval units for 15 turns. Chance of triggering another narrative event. Imprison, more minuses on land unit, or curfew, which gives me stability but a massive hit to my industry. Right now, screw your freedoms as we continue on the order axis. Yes,
reaching the end of an ideology axis isn't extremist. Think of it as being focused, yes? Very goal-oriented.
Actually, I would say that that is literally the definition of extremism, reaching the absolute logical end of your ideology, but oh well, details. We just got a new planning, new research there as well. Public infrastructure, minus 20 unrest on Commons Quarter industry cost, that's nice. And urban administration giving me a new city cap and police force, which is an upgrade to existing garrisons if I need more stability. Stability can be quite important because, as you can see here, you take a pretty damn big stability loss from every district, minus 10, from each and every one of them, and then also another stability hit from number of attached territories. And since there is a pretty hard limit on your number of cities, you're going to want to attach a bunch of territories to single cities. Nessa here, for example, has 5 territories, which is a minus 80, 75 stability, yes, 80 stability from number of attached territories. Quite a bit, quite a bit. Luckily, there are stability buildings, of course, and you could also just garrison stuff, as in the good old-fashioned days. Alright, I do think I want to be seizing some stuff here, but I do think I also want to keep it a little bit from the enemy, so we are going to be doing some burning, methinks.
Let's go.
Oh, that's a weird one. Did not end the turn properly. There we go. Let's burn that down as well. The amount of time it takes to burn a building depends on the units being used, and the amount of money also depends a bit on the units and also on your tradition. For example, I do believe... here we go, yes.
How do you do?
Thief. Whilst having this badge, this Empire ransacking armies earn more money defined by the level of this badge. So I've gotten very good at taking other people's property, which is nice because that will of course in turn allow me to steal yet more of their property. Let's see, is there anything else I can ransack over here? Not really. Sadly, you can't really bombard cities, at least not yet. I don't have battleships, so maybe a little bit later. But at the very least, the little steam frigates cannot do so. Isn't that adorable? And of course, you just have to be engaged in the usual day-to-day running of your empire. There is also a religion mechanic, as you can see here. My religion is doing fairly well. I've got enough faith to spread out, and I am definitely absolutely murdering the Mongols' faith. But I don't have quite enough to push on into the enemy territories here, as pretty much all of my faith is being directed that way, rather than over here, so I'm pushing hard for these territories. As you gain more followers, you will be able to unlock tenants, which are benefits to your religion. In my case, they're mostly the greedy ones. And you also have a society tree, where you can unlock various civic ideas. Some of them are a little annoying, because irreligion, like, I don't want to be in a religious society. I want to be a bunch of religious lunatic, thank you very much, so I'm simply just going to ignore that entirely. And you move the little bars, and you get various bonuses dependent upon how far the bar has gone in any direction. It's often beneficial to move the bar as far as possible, but at the same time, you might also be getting events that are just a little bit too tasty. Like 15 turns of increased research, for example, is quite nice. Ooh, we have ourselves an opportunity to demonstrate the combat here. Not an ideal position. You can see that this unit of little carracks and cogs are moored up next to a little bit of a fortification. So I can't move in like this because that's in the enemy's zone of control. So I have to move over here. Now, you'll see that gives me only 4 deployment tiles, but I've got way more ships than that, which would give the enemy a big advantage. This is a nice way of actually giving a reason to engage in a little bit of strategy. So instead, we're going to try and attack from this angle, which will actually give me the huge advantage of pinning them up against the coast. Oh, wisely they decide to fuck right off there. A wise idea. Retreating does, however, give a pretty nasty smack to your war support, so you can't be doing that too often. You really can't be doing that too often. There we go. I've sacked this settlement. You will now see that that has destroyed the outpost, leaving this place open for potential colonization, which I think is exactly what we will eventually be doing. Now, though, let's begin moving towards the enemy city, shall we? To demonstrate a little bit of siege combat. Hello, hello. You seem to have wandered out into the shallows there. Now, there's also another enemy fleet nearby, so they will be dragged into the manual battle. They have decided to stand and fight. Very brave, if also rather silly of them. I am the one attacking, so I'll have the first turn, so we'll deploy ourselves to make full use of that. Alrighty then. So, these vessels, as you can see, need a line of sight. I can move this one over here and you can see a preview on the map of what it can shoot at. They do have quite a lot of range, but they can't shoot at something they can't see, and friendly units are larger than they look. So in this case, this unit is actually blocking my line of sight to this enemy unit. Alright, let's sink this one. Okay. Right, we'll just point our broadside the other way there. That's fine and dandy, no problems. And we'll sink this one. Yeah, these poor bastards are somewhat outmatched technologically, so they can't really put up that much of a fight against me here, sadly. Sinky, 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 sinky. And I'll sink that, which will open up a point of view to that. And one of that. And they're pretty much all down for the count. You can also turn on automatic battle if you just want the AI to take care of whatever's left over. In the meantime, we're going to continue moving our army towards the enemy. A fascinating mix, this, of musket line infantry next to Maxim machine guns, next to Napoleonic-era dragoons, and of course World War I-era artillery. Yeah, the era system, if I have one complaint about the game, let's get money, it is definitely that it's way too bloody short. This is already on the slow setting right here, and it's only 450 turns. The endless mode is only 600 turns, which, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound very endless to me, frankly. And it's way, 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 way too bloody fast. By the time I had actually unlocked Knights Heavy Cavalry, I was already starting to build conquistadors and mortar artillery, like big siege guns, meaning that the Knights were entirely pointless to me. The research tree is just a little bit too small, frankly. Not to mention this as well, right? You've got biplanes, and then after another like 5 or 6 turns of research, you've got actual World War II fighters. Right, okay, so what even is the point? I mean, maybe if you don't have access to aluminum, maybe. And that was one thing that was keeping me back earlier, where I simply didn't have access to enough iron to move on to a particular type of heavy infantry. But all of these needs to be a lot slower, and I wouldn't mind honestly seeing like a doubling of this tree. Maybe have a little bit of fodder in between that simply gives like a stat boost to the units, so you don't go from, you know, biplanes to monoplanes to jet fighters just immediately. That would be nice, because it feels like there's not a whole lot of reason to build a lot of these units since you're only playing with them for like 10 turns, as it's really easy to get an absolute buttload of technology, and since the various units are much stronger than the other, you can't really just wait either. The biplane has 51 to 55. That's one of the smaller differences I've seen, but you've also got less movement, of course, and then there's the veterancy, which will increase the difference even further. But in certain types, where there's special units involved, the difference can be absolutely massive and kind of forces you to go on ahead. Let's do ourselves a manual siege battle here. Waiting for confirmation from the Aztecs, and there we are. Now you can see that they of course have a city here, so they do have some tall walls to shelter behind. But I have artillery, which is always quite nice. We'll set these guys up, ready, and the heavy machine gun, and we'll end the deployment there. Alright. The siege artillery, of course, have got a buttload of range, to the point that I can shoot all all the way over here, and you can also see a preview up top. In this case, it will hurt the drafters quite badly, and it'll also smash apart the stone walls. But I've got a better chance over here. You can also see the breakdown of the reasoning. So I get +4 from friendly units, +4 from high ground, +1 from veterancy, +1 from Lighthouse of Alexandria, -4 from no line of sight, indirect fire, and -3 from crossing river. Now, how the hell a river crossing prevents artillery from firing effectively, I don't bloody know. That's mildly retarded, but oh well, fire away. Boom. You can also speed up the animations, of course. Boom. Let's see, this one can't shoot up there at all because line of sight. But my line infantry can, and there you go. Moided. Absolutely moided. Now we're gonna move up the heavy machine gun right there. And we're just gonna reorganize here a little bit so they can't get my artillery if they try. And then we'll end round to see what the Aztecs have got. I doubt they've got much. I can also call in support from the biplanes, which is quite cool. The machine gun just murdered a whole unit there. And another one. Yeah, machine guns are pretty okay. They're pretty okay. Particularly against civilians wielding mallets, unsurprisingly. Oh, that was everything they had, was it? Alright, too bad for them. Let's send in the dragoons to see what we've got here. Oh, I thought that would give them entrance?
Let's go.
Ah, no, it's heavy. It's a heavy weapon, so it can't climb fortifications, I believe, even if they are... Oh, no, that's why. It's because it's not actually destroyed, I believe. Maybe? No? Huh. I think I should be able to get in there. You know, it's 0 hit points. Weird. It might just be because it's heavy weaponry, because stuff like chariots cannot climb into fortifications for obvious reasons. And there you go. The city of Thebes has been seized by our glorious, glorious army. I can't do anything with it right now, and its stability will also decrease. So if you don't get the war over quickly enough, you might have several rebellions on your hands. But you will also see, that's not the ones either, these ones, that has given them a big whack to their ongoing war support. So you just need to rack up a few victories, and eventually you can force the enemy to cry uncle and surrender. I really do like the turn-based strategy system, though this leads me to my one big complaint about the game: the AI. Now, early on, the AI is pretty darn good, and mostly because it cheats like an absolute mofo. Oh god, the AI seems to know where all of your stuff is. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have a fog of war, and it can break relationships quite easily as well. Early on, the Abyssinians, I think they were at the time, the yellow people, were over here on the map, and I just made this little city, and I'd had an awful start. I had found dick all food down here, and my population was just not really growing. So I hadn't been building a whole lot of military units. I had like 2 dedicated military units, and that was it. And they declared a surprise war on me, rushing over the border and managing to seize Nessa with very little resistance. Unfortunately for them, when they then continued to move forward with mostly civilian units rather than actual proper military, and both focused heavily on archers, my chariots absolutely rolled the hell out of them. And that was the last and only war where I met actual proper military resistance. After that, I have just rolled everything. I haven't encountered a single difficult war thereafter. Like, the most powerful nation I've encountered has had like a third or a fourth of my military, and it's been an absolute ruffle stomp time and time and time and time again. Now, when it comes to building their economies, the AI can be fairly good. They can build up a lot of research, and they can smash through the eras super goddamn quickly, to the point where I have no bloody idea how they're doing it. So the Indians over here, for example, are the current leader. So their strength is 2 right now, and they are an open and trusting archetype. They've been keeping up quite well, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if it turns out that they have basically no units whatso bloody ever. If higher difficulties change this, I don't know. I haven't tested it all that much. I'm playing on the nation difficulty, I believe, right now. There are 3 higher difficulties, but the problem is, if the AI simply just has a massive advantage in the early game, because it gets lots of extra stacks of food and science and resources, etc., so that it can rush you down, well, once you begin figuring out how to stack things yourself and begin producing ridiculous amounts of resources, you're back at the beginning where you can kind of just ruffle stomp their military and run them straight over with nearly no problems whatsoever. I mean, I believe the Mongolians? Mongols, yes? They're pretty large at this point. They've got, like, what, two major cities and tons of smaller territories? They're not a military threat to me at all, as they're still stuck in the medieval age. These guys have just been... I've just picked on them whenever I need more territory. They've barely gotten crossbowmen and pikemen at this point. Like, holy hell are they far behind. It's kind of ridiculous. The AI... well, again, bearing in mind, I haven't tried it on the 3 other higher difficulties, so I'm hoping that they're a lot more competent, but at the end of the day, the problem there is that will only just be adding yet further arbitrary modifiers to the AI. It will simply just be getting more food, more resources, more units, more bonuses for no particular reason. It'll just be given a larger bonus, which doesn't solve the fundamental problem that the AI just isn't very good at dealing with the game mechanics. It doesn't focus its military very well, and it certainly doesn't fight the battles very well. Maybe that changes fundamentally, again, high difficulties, I hope so, but from my experience of about, 20 years of playing video games, I don't think I've ever seen an AI actually get smarter on higher difficulty, so that is a big issue. Beyond that, though, the basic gameplay is absolutely excellent. It is quite addictive, it gives you a lot of different ways of playing the game, and there's, all of the mechanics just flow together very beautifully. It does have a pacing problem, a fairly big one in my opinion. You should be able to slow it down by at least twice as much, honestly. And 600 turns? I mean, I've just reached the modern era now, right? The game is ending in 61 turns, and I've still got this much left to go? That's kind of annoying. I would rather see the game go a lot longer, but there actually be some ability to play with all of these toys, instead of scrapping them and getting on to the next unit within, 9 turns. There's commandos up here that takes 10 turns to research. So when I get probably the next basic infantry unit, which is down here, I'll have what? So we got 8 turns there, and there's another 10 turns there, maybe 10 turns there. So 20, 30 turns, maybe, tops, before you've got the next in. And that's long by this game standards. That's really long by this game standards, comparing, again, this one to this one. 9 turns until you get the next upgrade. it could be spaced out a little bit more. Maybe even slot an entire era in the middle somewhere, as it's a little bit strange to go from early modern to industrial to contemporary. I feel like there could have been one in the middle here somewhere, but oh well. All in all, these are minor gripes about what is an absolutely excellent game, and, well, one of my worries was that it would be a very diverse game, you catch my drift, but no, it is, but it is skin deep. It is simply a paint job, which, at the end of the day, alright, fine, I ain't got no problem with that, so. If you're interested in a Civilization-style game, definitely give Humankind a look. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.